Nothing is more dangerous than thinking you are thinking, when in fact you are merely repeating. This is the greatest prison of our time, believing we are free while carrying thoughts that were not born from our own reflection. Ideas planted with surgical precision, emotions manipulated with invisible mastery, decisions we believe to be our own, but which were already programmed before we even opened our mouths to express an opinion. And the most disturbing thing, almost no one notices. We live in an age where narratives not only explain the world, they construct it. And these narratives have engineers, people, institutions, algorithms, all vying for the most sacred space of your existence, your attention. And once your attention is captured, your emotions are manipulated. And when your emotions are manipulated, your reason is silenced. Your will is no longer your own. Your fear, your pride, your haste become tools in the hands of those who know how to use them. That's why this video isn't about conspiracy theory. It's about lucidity, about learning to see the invisible threads that drive collective behavior, that create manufactured crises, that shape villains and heroes in real time according to the needs of those who write the scripts. It's about what happens when you stop accepting everything as normal and start asking them why, for whom, in exchange for what. In the next few chapters, you'll understand how manipulative messages follow predictable patterns. They start by hijacking your focus with shocking images, relentless repetition, and alarmist headlines. Then they bring in authority figures to tell you what's right, even outside their area of expertise. Next, they divide the world into good and evil, making it dangerous to disagree. And when you're vulnerable enough, the intense emotions kick in: fear, hope, guilt, without any solid facts, just the power of emotion, just the weight of urgency. You will also see how manufactured scarcity and appeals to protect your children or the nation activate ancient scripts that blind even the most rational minds. You will learn to question the timing of news stories, follow the money trail, and identify when a change in context is being used to justify abuses that would previously have been unacceptable. And above all, you will learn to be suspicious of stories that are too simple, those with perfect heroes, absolute villains, and a people who only need to obey. This content is not comfortable. It does not offer you a new side to follow. It invites you to disconnect from sides and return to the center of your consciousness, because in the end, it's not about being right. It's about being awake. How many times have you felt that something didn't make sense, but you went ahead anyway? That there was something forced about the urgency, the fear, the unanimity, as if the whole world were obeying an invisible orchestra, and you were about to miss something if you dared to question it. This chapter is about that, about the subtle and brutal power of narratives that shape our perception without us even realizing it. The first trap is attention. Whoever controls what you look at controls what you feel, and whoever controls what you feel controls what you do. The repetition of shocking images, headlines with terms such as unprecedented or last chance, and the constant bombardment of crises create the illusion of urgency. You run, react, share, decide, without time to think, without space to discern. When the mind enters a state of alert, it suspends critical thinking, and that's when manipulation sets in. Then comes authority, but not real authority, the kind built on wisdom and integrity. I'm talking about forced performed authority, used as a seal of truth to cover up doubts, experts who stray from their own field, celebrities who opine with conviction on everything, leaders who change their discourse with the wind. Their presence does not inform, it shapes. They don't teach us how to think, they tell us what to think. And without realizing it, we end up bowing down, not to reason, but to the tone of voice that seems confident. Soon after, we are led into humanity's oldest trap, belonging. Dividing the world into us and them creates a comforting illusion of clarity. On one side, the right people. On the other, the dangerous, the deniers, the traitors. This emotional tribalism creates symbolic enemies. It is no longer about ideas, it is about identities. Disagreement becomes treason. Questioning becomes offensive. And in this climate, the fear of social rejection silences the courage to think differently. But the final blow is always emotional. Fear paralyzes, hope blinds, anger shortens the path. When a message brings us to tears, panic, or euphoria without presenting a clear and verifiable path, we should be wary. Strong emotions without solid foundations are shortcuts to obedience. They are invitations to collective delirium. Who benefits from your uncontrolled emotions? Who profits from your urgency? When triggered by emotions, the mind stops observing and starts reacting. So the most important question I can ask here is, what do you feel when you hear a message that is too strong? Are you being touched or manipulated? Human beings are fascinating. We have the ability to build civilizations, write sacred books, create symphonies, but all it takes is a breath of fear, a spark of scarcity, or a threat to our sense of belonging for everything to crumble within us. And what seems like instinct is often just programming, ancestral scripts activated by carefully constructed narratives. This chapter is about these invisible gears. We live in an ancient body with primitive fears, trying to survive in a modern world that has learned to exploit each of those fears. Scarcity, rejection, danger. The mere suggestion that something is running out, or that you will be excluded, is enough to alter your behavior. And the most disturbing thing, many of these situations do not actually exist. They have been carefully staged to appear real. Imagine an alarming news story about food shortages. Scenes of empty shelves, people running, trembling voices in the background. The collective reaction is predictable. A rush to the markets, panic, real shortages. But what if it was all just a staged event? What if the message was broadcast on the same day that a controversial bill was to be voted on? Panic is effective. It distracts. And distraction in this game is a tool. The timing is not accidental. When a scandal breaks, look at what's happening on the other side. When a celebrity breaks the internet, ask what's being hidden. The new, the unexpected, the viral, all of this is used to divert your focus. In a society saturated with stimuli, attention has become the most sought-after resource. And whoever has your attention shapes your reality. Furthermore, when all information channels repeat the same phrase, in the same tone, with the same words, be suspicious. Plurality disappears when the narrative is singular. Doubt becomes a crime. The questioner becomes the enemy. Independent thinking becomes a threat. And before you know it, you are living in a world where there is only one side to the story. This is not consensus. It is engineering. But the most sensitive point of all is identity. Effective PSYOPs do not attack your reason. They seduce your ego. Phrases like good citizens do this. Patriots support that. Smart people think this way aren't just slogans. They're invitations for you to see yourself as part of something. But the currency is dangerous, because once you accept that you belong, questioning becomes painful. You start to mold yourself so as not to break the mold, and your freedom slips away, slowly but surely. There is a question we rarely ask ourselves, but one that can completely change the way we see the world. Who benefits from your belief? I'm not just talking about ideologies or political parties. I'm talking about the entire narrative structure that is presented to us as unquestionable truth. In times of sophisticated manipulation, following the money is often the only way to find the thread of reality. The truth is simple. No narrative can stand without a group that profits from it. When a message spreads with force, intensity, and institutional support, ask, who is gaining from this? Who finances the studies, the experts, the campaigns? Who profits from mass emotional adherence? The naivety of believing that everything is done out of altruism is exactly what feeds those who exploit our emotions. Imagine an NGO that preaches noble values such as sustainability or public health. Now discover that it is funded by companies that profit directly from the measures it advocates. That doesn't mean that everything is a lie, but it does mean that you need to look deeper. The truth never shouts. It reveals itself in the details, in the traces, in the contract hidden in the footer. Another subtle and dangerous mechanism is context shifting. When the environment changes, what was once unthinkable becomes acceptable. In the name of security, we accept invasions of privacy. In the name of health, we accept total control. The problem is not caution itself, but the normalization of abuse under the guise of protection. And the most perverse thing is that when the context changes, so do the moral rules. That is why we need to be alert to the leaps in logic that occur during these changes. If a leader is suddenly seen as an absolute savior, even with obvious mistakes, question the script. If one group is completely silenced while another dominates the debate with absolute truths, question the framework. The problem is not disagreement, it is the impossibility of disagreeing, and at this point we return to the center of the game, the archetype. Every well-constructed narrative creates clear roles. There is the hero, usually someone charismatic who seems to hold the collective destiny in their hands. There is the villain, the one who delays progress, threatens the group, personifies evil, and there is the people who need to be saved, guided, awakened. But what if all of this is just a carefully staged play? What if the hero isn't so pure, the villain is just a dissident, and the people are deep down a hypnotized audience? We need to learn to deconstruct these roles. No one is just light or shadow, and when we understand this, manipulation loses its power, because archetypes are shortcuts of the mind, and those who live by shortcuts never reach the depths of consciousness. The most powerful manipulation is not the one that distorts reality. It is the one that convinces you that you have arrived at the truth on your own. When you repeat ideas that did not originate with you, but sound familiar, comforting, or too right, it is a sign that something was planted in your mind long before your decision. The most effective weapon of psychological engineering is not fear. It is the illusion of autonomy. And this illusion is sustained by a subtle mechanism, the structure of the narrative. It all starts with expectation, what they want you to believe or do. Then comes belief, what assumptions they assume you already accept. Next comes perception, what is shown or hidden to shape your understanding. Finally, definition, what is presented as absolute truth, impossible to dispute. This sequence is invisible, but it shapes your worldview as if it were spontaneous. You begin to notice this when you see voices being silenced, criticism being ridiculed, alternatives being labeled as dangerous. When an idea needs censorship to survive, it is no longer an idea, it is a disguised doctrine. Critical thinking requires space, debate, and confrontation of views, and where there is fear of confrontation, there is a project of domination underway. One of the most obvious signs of manipulation is how quickly people become obedient. A campaign, a symbol, a hashtag, and suddenly everyone seems to think the same way. What they call consensus is often just the effect of silent pressure. You don't want to be the odd one out, the outlier, the inconvenient one, but that is precisely where freedom lies, in the courage not to be predictable. When everyone says, that's obvious, it's time to take another look. When everyone points to the same villain, look for the shadow. When everyone applauds the hero, ask who wrote the script. Living consciously is not being against everything. It is being in favor of lucidity. It's not allowing your mind to be occupied by other people's strategies. It's reclaiming the power to doubt, not out of rebellion, but out of integrity. If you've made it this far, you've already realized that the greatest gesture of strength is not resisting others, it's resisting illusion. And that requires a commitment to the truth, to free thinking, to your conscience. If this content touched you, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's not just a click, it's a symbolic act of support for a journey that invites you to think, not to follow. If you want to further strengthen this project, consider contributing with a donation of any amount. Every contribution helps us keep this message alive, free from filters and conveniences. And now I invite you to do one more thing. Write a word in the comments that represents this internal pact of awakening. It can be consciousness, lucidity, or free mind. Choose the one that resonates with you, and let it be your anchor against the narratives that try to numb you.